An ordinary shift for a police officer.
It started out as nothing.
It was innocuous. It was a little crime.
Can quickly take an extraordinary turn.
A simple traffic stop went stratospheric within 2 minutes.
Speed is 70 miles an hour.
He's outside the petrol station fighting with another male.
A routine case.
You can start off with something and it can turn into something completely different.
Taser! Taser! I'm here from you!
Can suddenly spiral into a serious incident.
Then it switched. He locked the door. She knew that something was very, very wrong here.
Stand by, I think we're going to have a decamp. One got out with a baseball bat. There's a ton of campus in the car.
They were literally on a rampage.
Sometimes the most minor crimes.
I was looking for a stolen quad bike, found a lot more.
Can crack major cases.
We were now possibly looking at a serial killer.
Today on Big Little Crimes, a routine check on a vulnerable pensioner exposes a serious and audacious crime.
We've gone from a welfare check within 24 hours to having a person charged with 2 counts of burglary.
An unexpected death slowly reveals the hallmarks of murder.
I knew she'd poisoned him. I just knew it.
But first, a minor traffic offence could be about to turn deadly.
He's got his hazard lights on, he's got front end damage. Speed is 70 miles an hour.
Sergeant Neil Daly's worked in his dream job as a traffic officer for the last 6 years. Ever since he was a boy, he's always had a passion for cars.
When I first left school, I went into work as a car mechanic. I was working as a police mechanic for a while, fixing the police vehicles, and then I went over to the stolen vehicle squad. And from there, I joined as a police officer.
The Sunday shift is drawing to a close, and Neil's got no idea how quickly an ordinary day is about to become extraordinary.
I drove back to the station and stopped at these traffic lights when I noticed a white Golf came through these traffic lights on red.
Over 1/5 of motorists run red lights every year, most of them by accident. So Neil thinks he'll be giving a simple caution and the driver can be on his way. But his expert car knowledge makes him question how accidental this actually is.
What drew my attention to the vehicle was the crash damage it had on the near side front corner. It's a £30,000 high-powered vehicle. So usually the sort of person who'd have that kind of vehicle takes pride in it, and it's on the driveway being polished, not driven in that manner. So I'm thinking, is this a stolen vehicle? Is that why he's driven through the red light as he panics on seeing a traffic vehicle parked up? So that caused me then to follow him.
Neil's gut instinct tells him to pull the driver over. But rather than stopping, the white Golf continues at a confusingly slow pace.
He's just going 20 miles an hour. I'm thinking, what's going on here? Why is he not stopping? He stopped and did a U-turn in front of me, at which point I'm driver to driver talking to this male.
Pull over! Pull over!
He's talking to me and he's saying, are you trying to kill me? Why are you following me? At that point, I'm thinking, what is going on with this driver?
The driver is behaving strangely, and he's still not getting out of the car, despite Neil's best efforts.
I see his face and see how much he's sweating. I'm thinking, is he under the influence of drink or drugs? And this guy is a danger to the public, and he's behind the wheel of a vehicle.
This has become much more serious than simply running a red light. If this man is under the influence, he could kill someone. But then, as quickly as the driver stopped, he takes off again, this time much faster.
It's a 30-mile-an-hour road. We were reaching speeds of 80, 90 miles an hour.
The crime is escalating quickly. A minor traffic offence has turned into a dangerous high-speed chase in a busy residential area, and Neil is completely on his own.
Speed is 70 miles an hour.
I'm on the radio feeding back what's happening, try to get a tactical plan in place to get the vehicle stopped further down the road. It is a dangerous situation, one that most police officers don't want to be in.
Unbeknownst to Neil, his colleagues are also looking for the same white Golf that he's following.
So there have been numerous reports that have come in that this vehicle was driving the wrong side of the motorway. All of my team were out looking for that Golf.
The scale of the crime is getting bigger by the second, and Neil is struggling to keep up with the erratic driver.
So right on Barton Road towards the traffic centre.
Just seen him turn this corner, and now he's out of sight.
Passers-by point Neil in the right direction, and the high-speed, dangerous chase continues. Neil still has no idea why the driver is so keen to get away. Is he under the influence and acting irrationally, or is something bigger at play?
The Golf has made its way round this roundabout. I'm coming out of this exit, and I see a black bag being discarded out the driver's window. And I'm thinking, what's in that bag that he's trying to discard at that point? All the time on my radio, I can hear my colleagues are coming from Traffic Boulevard. So he's heading, in theory, back towards my colleagues. So I decide to stop my vehicle in the middle of the road and get out and get that bag. As I walk up to the bag, the zip part of the hold door is open. So I fold it open and I'm in shock.
In this bag, I think you've probably deployed a shotgun with bullet.
The loaded shotgun cocked over in the bag.
It's a shocking development. The minor offence of running a red light has turned into a huge crime. Neil needs to act fast.
I need to get this message back to my colleagues who are down there about to face this man that he's just discarded a loaded shotgun. What else has he got on him? Has he got a handgun on him? Is he going to cause harm to members of the public? Is he going to cause harm to my colleagues?
Will Neil and his colleagues be able to stop the man, who could still be armed, before the scale of the crime gets even bigger? Later, the investigation ramps up to a whole new level.
Taser! Taser! Stand still!
Even though he's been tasered once, the drugs that he's on and the alcohol and everything in his body, he fights his way through that and he's kicking and screaming. He's wild.
In our next case, could a sudden death be caused by food poisoning or something much more sinister? Retired coroner's officer Kate Booth spent 24 years investigating unexpected deaths.
There are many cases that stay with you, that will never leave you.
And there's one in particular that Kate will always remember. It all began with a very ordinary call one very ordinary Sunday morning.
I received a call from a doctor at the hospital to say that there was a death of a young man, and they didn't know the cause of death. This man presented at the hospital with severe vomiting and abdominal pains. He died within 24 hours of admission to hospital. So 2 things that required reporting to the coroner: a death within 24 hours to hospital and an unknown cause of death. I knew that it would require a post-mortem examination.
What Kate needs to do next is very much routine.
My job is to gain as much information about that deceased person as possible and what his recent movements were. We need some past medical history about this man so that the pathologist would have some kind of idea as to what was going on.
But it's Sunday, and the man's doctor's is closed. So Kate tracks down his next of kin to see if they can shed any light on what might have happened.
His brother didn't really know much about his day-to-day activities or whatever. He just told me he'd been sick a couple of times.
The sickness ties in with the man's symptoms when he was admitted to hospital, but doesn't explain his sudden death. Kate hears back from the man's GP, but the information he provides raises more questions than it answers.
And he was suffering from pins and needles in the ends of his fingers, but nothing that the GP could tell me that would suggest to him what he would have died from.
The mystery deepens. But can the pathologist's report provide any answers?
And the cause of death came back as a severe gastroenteritis, which is quite an unusual cause of death.
The coroner accepts the cause of death. But Kate's not convinced this is the end of the matter.
I'd never actually heard of anyone dying from that in my time in the office. There's something more behind this, and I really need to investigate this a little bit more.
But the body's been released for burial. Kate could just move on to the next job, but her gut instinct is to keep digging.
I was thinking, if he's got gastroenteritis, that's a worrying condition, and it's fatal, proved fatal for this man. So if he's eaten something and he's had it in a restaurant, or he's had it at home, or there are other members of the family poorly, or, you know, I really should be telling the environmental health people.
This is a small and so far isolated case, but Kate needs to find out where the man ate his last meal, or the case could get much bigger.
So I rang the brother, and he said, my brother had his last meal at the home of a lady who is his girlfriend. I said, oh, not his family home with his wife? He says, no. And he told me what he had to eat, which I wrote down. It seemed a simple meal. And I said, is she poorly? He said, no. I said, is anybody else in the house poorly? Ill? No.
It doesn't look like this is a case of severe food poisoning. But Kate still feels there's more to the story.
There was a long pause, and he said, well, I think I should tell you that 3 years ago, this lady conspired to have my brother murdered. And I said, what? I was just absolutely astounded.
He tells Kate his brother was tipped off about the alleged plot to kill him, but continued his relationship with the woman supposedly behind it. And he was with her just before he was rushed to hospital.
My gut instinct told me that she had tried once and failed, so I just felt sure that she had tried again.
When this routine case first landed on her desk, the last thing on Kate's mind was murder. But the dead man is now buried, along with any evidence, or so she thinks.
He went on to say a sentence that I will never, ever forget. He said his wife has kept a bucket of vomit in her garage.
The dead man's suspicious wife has kept the bucket as evidence of his unexplained sickness. Kate knows it could hold vital clues. But first, she needs some expert advice, so she calls a consultant.
I said to him, what poison would give you pins and needle tingling in your finger ends? And straight away, he said arsenic.
It's an astonishing possibility. What started out as an unexplained death could have just turned into something much bigger. Kate knows something isn't right, but she never imagined it could be this.
I had never, ever been involved in anything with arsenic in it, nothing.
So why didn't this deadly poison show up in the post-mortem?
We wouldn't test for arsenic, it's not automatic. And at the time that we did the examination, there was absolutely no suggestion that he'd been given arsenic.
There hasn't been a case of arsenic poisoning in this country for more than 50 years. And Kate's got her work cut out convincing her colleague, Detective Chief Inspector Joe Penrose.
My initial thoughts were, you must be joking, quite honestly. I knew absolutely nothing about arsenic other than the type of thing you might see in a film, an old Hitchcock film or something like that.
Kate knows this is fact, not fiction. The cause of death has been signed off, and her instinct is they've made a big mistake. But can she persuade Joe it's more than just a hunch? Or is it case closed?
Thought we'd made a terrible error and somebody was going to potentially get away with murder.
Later in the investigation, officers face a very difficult decision.
Now, in my experience, exhumation is not something that happens every day. It really is very, very rare.
But first, we're heading to the northeast, where the hunt for an uninvited visitor uncovers a serial thief. After 10 years in the job, Detective Sergeant Liam Robertson knows exactly what he likes most about being a copper.
I walk to work on a morning, not knowing what that day's going to throw at me, and that's quite exciting.
And Liam's next case is about to put his detective skills to the ultimate test.
We received a call from a care company who provided care services to an individual. This was a vulnerable gentleman. He suffered from dementia, living alone by himself. He'd made some comments to the care workers that a female had been into his flat and had made some comments to him of a bit of a strange nature, asking him whether he liked sex and whether he wanted to have sex.
It's a highly unusual case. And there's something else that's causing him concern.
They had noticed that there was a silver bracelet that the gentleman would wear that habitually, that they noticed that he didn't have on his wrist.
Could it just be coincidence? Or has the mystery caller helped herself? Liam decides to pay the man a visit to try and find out.
I've started the body cam footage rolling, and we've sat down with the son to try and speak to the gentleman and get some more information about what's happened.
Now, the reason why I came to see you is because your carers have told us that you've had a female in the flat. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday, yeah.
Right. What time did that...
Video footage like this is really important in police cases, and this might be the only account that we are ever able to get from an elderly gentleman who suffers from dementia.
Was last night the first time that she'd been...
He's quite elderly and he's profoundly deaf. I'm struggling to ask the questions in a way that he understands and that he can hear.
What did she do while she was in the house? What did she do when she was in the house? Can you tell me what she looked like? What colour hair did she have? What colour hair did she have?
Liam doesn't have much to go on, but he knows how vulnerable the elderly man is, and he's determined to keep him safe. He starts with the missing bracelet.
He doesn't know its whereabouts. He's not able to tell us whether or not it's been stolen or not, or when the last time that he saw it was.
Liam's not making much progress. He doesn't know if a crime has even been committed. But what the man reveals next sets alarm bells ringing.
I'm really sick of this. People coming in all the time. Why don't they leave me alone? I'm 86 years old. I want peace and quiet. They're trying to help me.
He kept repeating this line to us, that he's sick and tired of people coming into his address that he doesn't want there, which made me start thinking, is this something that's been a bit more of a prolonged incident rather than just a one-off thing, and that somebody's accessing the flat on a more regular basis?
Liam's instinct tells him that a vulnerable man is being targeted.
There was definitely something here that we needed to look into further.
But with no other witnesses or clues from the scene, Liam can't just rely on a hunch. He needs evidence too, and with the suspect still at large, he needs it fast.
Looking around the area, I noticed that there was an off-licence very close to the scene. I could see that there were CCTV cameras up at the off-licence, and I wanted to make sure that I got control of that CCTV footage.
The camera faces the man's house and could help identify the mystery woman. Liam loads the footage and straight away makes a breakthrough.
The footage showed a female walking down the street, approaching the property and letting herself into the address. She was a blonde-haired female, that she was wearing casual clothes, clearly didn't appear to be a carer conducting a visit to the elderly gentleman. It let us know that there was something had taken place at that address.
The footage clearly shows a woman entering the man's house, uninvited. The investigation is gaining momentum. A crime has definitely been committed.
It let us know that there was a person who was entering the address, and it also gave us our first description of what the person who was responsible looked like.
Liam needs to find out who this woman is and why she was in the house. But just as he leaves the off-licence, he spots something unusual at the victim's house across the road.
Glanced to my right and noticed that the door was ajar, open by a couple of inches, and that piqued my interest.
Something isn't right. Is this small investigation about to flare up?
Opened the door, shouted the victim's name, concerned for his welfare.
There's no response. But there's a big surprise waiting for Liam inside.
I opened the door to find a blonde-haired female emerge from a box room. She looked quite surprised to see me as well. I thought, bingo, we've got the person who's been in his house the day before.
Liam's instinct about this not being a one-off visit was right, and he's now face to face with his suspect.
Straight away informed her that I didn't believe she should be in the address, and that was arresting her on suspicion of a burglary. The expression on her face really was one of somebody who'd been caught red-handed.
It's an incredible twist in a fast-moving case. Liam's hunt for his suspect is over. And now she's in handcuffs. He needs to check on the victim.
I've moved into the living room and found him asleep on the settee. It was clear at that point that he probably didn't have any understanding that that female was in the address.
What started as a routine welfare check is now a much bigger burglary investigation. The suspect's been in the house twice in less than 24 hours. And Liam wants to know what she's been up to while the man's been asleep.
We did a search of the female under arrest, and in the handbag that the female had with her, we've discovered a man's silver bracelet.
It matches the victim's bracelet, reported missing by his carers. The scale of the crime is getting bigger by the second. She's immediately arrested for burglary and theft.
Absolutely great feeling. You know, you really do kind of parade back to the police station like a bit of a peacock, having found somebody in the process of committing a burglary, because it happens so rarely.
Liam heads back to the shop across the road, and now he's got his hands on CCTV showing the suspect going into the victim's house not once, but twice. But he's keeping that to himself as he starts the interview tape.
The suspect announced that she wanted to provide a pre-prepared statement and wasn't prepared to answer any further questions. She accepted that she was found in the address by police. She claimed that she had been at the address by invitation of the resident.
But how does she explain the bracelet found in her handbag?
She had found that silver bracelet on approach to the address and picked it up off the floor, recognising it as his bracelet and wanting to return it to him.
But what the suspect doesn't know is that not only has she been caught red-handed by Liam, she's been caught on camera too.
We like to keep some things in our back pocket, and that's where things like having the CCTV is crucial. Having seen that CCTV footage, there was no suggestion that she'd found anything on the floor. You would have expected to have seen her stoop to pick something up. We asked her to account for how she's came about the bracelet, and she just sat in silence, didn't answer any questions.
The cat's got her tongue, but Liam's got his suspect. And he has all the evidence he needs to charge her.
We've gone from a welfare check within 24 hours to having a person charged with a burglary against him.
It's great news for Liam and his vulnerable victim. He's closed the case. But what he's about to discover soon blows it wide open again.
What we realised was that the lady in question had actually been circulated as wanted for other offences. We'd had 2 reports made to the police. One of the females become abusive and started shouting and spitting. We then receive a further report from a more elderly gentleman. The caller on that occasion had let this female into the address. She's then made excuses to use the toilet and then leave the address, and subsequently the male in question's realised that as she's left the address, his laptop's no longer where he left it.
What Liam thought was a one-time opportunistic thief has become an investigation into a serial burglar.
The CCTV footage actually showed the same suspect entering the address of the person whose laptop had been stolen and leaving a few minutes later with a carrier bag in her hand.
Liam's instinct has not only led him to his suspect, but has also helped solve 2 other cases. Before the case goes to trial, the suspect pleads guilty to burglary and theft. She's sentenced to 2 years in prison.
Great result for us at the end of the day. To be able to protect a vulnerable person in this way really does make the job worthwhile.
It's time to head back to Greater Manchester and the car chase through the city streets. Sergeant Neil Daly and the team are at the centre of a crime that has escalated beyond belief.
He's got his hazard lights on, he's got front end damage. Speed is 70 miles an hour.
After running a red light that led to a high-speed car chase, the driver of a white Golf has chucked a loaded shotgun out of his car and is desperately trying to get away. But what the driver doesn't know is that he's heading straight towards more police officers.
What else has he got? Has he got any other weapons on him?
The crime is escalating at a worrying pace.
I could hear on the radio they crashed his vehicle into members of the public and he was out on foot running.
Past 2-1, he's outside the petrol station. They're fighting with another male outside the petrol station.
I think at that point when adrenaline's high, you don't really have much time to think about it. All I'm thinking is he's discarded 1 shotgun. Has he got anything else on him?
It's a busy Sunday afternoon, and this is unfolding right outside a packed shopping centre full of families and children.
He's taking massive chances now. We can't let him get into a member of the public's car and try to get away further or cause more problems. There's a motorway not far from him. He's going to run out into a live lane. Whatever he's taken, he's not thinking straight, is he? So we need to get him secured.
Taser! Taser! Stand still! Stay there! Stay there! Roll over onto your front! Onto your front now! Do it now! Hands behind
Even though he's been tasered once on the floor, the drugs that he's on and the alcohol and everything in his body, he fights his way through that and he's kicking and screaming and he's wild. It takes the officer 2 shots with a taser to bring him to the floor. So I come over and take hold of his legs and just jump on his legs, and then so we can get him secure and get him in handcuffs.
The man is finally arrested, but the investigation is far from over. What started out as a minor offence has turned into a major crime, So Neil hands the case over to the organised crime team led by Detective Constable David Jarvis.
Really important how we get these weapons off the streets.
The offender is identified as 41-year-old Daniel Murdoch. It's David's job to make sure that the case against him is watertight.
We became aware quite quickly. He's previously got firearms convictions, a few other offences around violence and drugs.
It's clear Murdoch is a dangerous man, but the team need to know if he has anything else to hide.
And a couple of house searches had taken place and from addresses that this guy's given. And when he'd done the house searches, it's clear that he doesn't live there. He's obviously given us a false address. It does sort of start sitting in the back of your mind that he's trying to hide something further.
David's team work fast to find out where Murdoch lives.
We were able to identify a street where we believed he was parking his car. So they start knocking on doors, start talking to people, and people start going, yeah, Daniel lives at flat number this.
David organises an emergency search warrant, but he knows he could be walking into a very dangerous situation.
We have to satisfy ourselves going through that door that we're not going to get shot when we go through. You know, you make it known that it's the police. As soon as you get no response, hit the door goes straight open.
Straight away, the team make a shocking discovery.
And his body armour. When that's searched, there's a spent shotgun cartridge in there.
The number of offences is growing and growing. Could Murdoch be responsible for a shooting?
One of the other officers shouts up he's found what he thinks is a gun in the bedroom. It was a large blue bag full of kids' toys. He doesn't realise what it is at that point, picks it up out of the bag to look at it and realises it's a gun. As a parent, it concerns me that he thought it was a good idea to put it there. You just think, oh, it's game on again. And then you start thinking, what's this guy actually involved in?
And the search continues to throw up new worrying evidence.
As you look at the gun, towards the bottom end of the gun, it had been carved into the woodwork of the gun. A bit of a derogatory term, sort of F the police.
What exactly was Murdoch planning to do with this gun? David sends it straight to the lab.
We want to get the shotgun analysed. We want to see what fingerprints, what DNA we can recover from it.
The fast-paced investigation has slowed right down. The team have an agonising 2-week wait for forensics to carefully examine the new weapon. But the wait is worth it. Murdoch's DNA is on the trigger.
It shows that he's not just sort of held it open-handed and someone's just put it in his hands. It shows that he's actually held it in a position to potentially fire it.
With such a vast amount of evidence mounted against him, there's no way out for Murdoch.
He gets charged whilst in prison, goes to court.
The police haven't been able to link the spent cartridge to a shooting. But Murdoch pleads guilty to carrying a loaded shotgun in a public place, possession of a prohibited firearm, and dangerous driving. He's sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. David is still in disbelief about how an officer's instinct to investigate a minor traffic crime resulted in the team getting a dangerous gunman off the streets.
From where it started to where it finished is massive. You get a little bit of a kick and a little bit of buzz off that because you know that everything you've done over 4 or 5 months, sort of from start to finish, has resulted in 2 guns off the street and the person who was in possession of those guns being in prison.
It's time to wrap up our final case of the day. A small investigation has spiraled. A man has died suddenly. The post-mortem revealed it was gastroenteritis. But the coroner's officer, Kate Booth, found out the victim's girlfriend plotted to have him murdered years ago. And now she's convinced this was take 2.
I knew she'd poisoned him. I just knew it. He's ingested something and she's given it to him.
Kate's determined digging has convinced DCI Joe Penrose that this minor case should now be a major investigation. But Joe still doesn't have any concrete evidence. It's been 5 days since the man died, and the clock is ticking.
What you're looking for is what people often call the golden hour opportunities. In this case, it was very difficult because the only seen opportunity we had at the moment was that bucket of vomit.
It's a highly unusual piece of evidence, but Joe's certain the bucket could kickstart his investigation.
What I want is some evidence that there's been wrongdoing, and that's going to come following analysis of the stomach contents and the vomit that we've now got in our possession.
The vomit's sent away to be tested, and while police wait for the results, Joe digs deeper into the victim's complicated love life.
He was a married man with a family, but he was also having an affair.
The victim's brother claims that his brother's mistress had plotted to kill him 3 years ago, but in a very different way. That time, she'd hired a hitman. And after a tip-off from the family, Joe manages to track him down.
The individual concerned was prepared to be a witness on our behalf and to say that she'd paid him £2,000 to kill the deceased. He'd not done that, he never intended to do that, and indeed revealed the plot to the deceased.
The investigation is building by the minute. But Joe still needs to prove that second time round, the suspect took matters into her own hands and delivered the deadly dose. The results are back from the lab.
We were told, yeah, there is trace of arsenic in the vomit.
It's a huge development.
Throughout my career, I've dealt with just about everything you could imagine. But, you know, arsenic as a poison has not been used in this country in my lifetime.
A suspected case of food poisoning has now become a murder investigation. The suspect is arrested and brought in for questioning.
She was totally in denial about any use of poison. She was quite straight about the fact that she'd given food to the deceased on that occasion, but claimed she hadn't poisoned him, and she was released on bail, pending further inquiries.
It's a blow to the investigation. And while the traces of poison in the bucket are significant evidence, it's not enough to prove the suspect deliberately poisoned the victim. Joe needs more evidence, but there's a problem.
The deceased had by then been buried, which created an extra dilemma in terms of where do we go from here. Now, in my experience, exhumation is not something that happens every day. It really is very, very rare. But the body was actually the primary crime scene.
The team make the bold decision to exhume the victim's body, to carry out a second post-mortem and test for arsenic. Joe's hoping it'll confirm his suspicions that the victim was poisoned more than once.
He'd been violently ill prior to his death. Moreover, that he'd been violently ill several weeks before also, and that there was a sort of a medical issue in the meantime in terms of the fact he couldn't use his hands properly. So all those things were kind of ringing bells.
Nail clippings and hair samples taken from the victim are sent away to the lab. This is fast becoming a groundbreaking case, and Joe knows it will need painstaking police work to crack it.
The work we did around the head hair was unique. I don't think anyone had ever done this piece of work before. Along those strands of hair, in certain places, there were signs of arsenic, and by calculating the average time in which head hair grows, the scientists were able to back calculate to the dates when arsenic had been administered, and they gave us 2 specific days.
The team are getting vital evidence by the day. They now know the victim was given arsenic 6 weeks before he died, but they need to prove where he was poisoned.
We were able to tie those 2 dates down to dates when he'd visited the address where the suspect lived, and indeed had food there.
It's a huge moment for the investigation. And Joe's instinct that he was poisoned more than once was right. Samples taken from the prime suspect also test positive for arsenic. It's great news for Joe and the investigation team. But he decides not to rearrest the suspect just yet.
We wanted to know a little bit more about something in the background which was causing problems, and that transpired to be ownership of the house where she was living. And the suspect had lived there for some time. She was claiming it was her property, whilst the family of the deceased was saying, no, this was his property. And we were aware that solicitors had become involved.
The bitter fallout over money gives Joe the motive he needs. And the number of offences is getting bigger by the day.
It was alleged she'd fraudulently tried to transfer the house she was living in into her name, and she was claiming it was her property.
In a matter of weeks, Joe's uncovered a failed plot involving a double-crossing hitman, a bitter financial dispute, and a deadly, poisonous trail that leads straight to their suspect.
So all of these things were spinning around our investigation. We were able to show adequate motive for why she would want to kill him. So you tie it all together, and all the background of what people were saying about their relationship, I think was a pretty compelling case.
The suspect is rearrested and brought back in to be interviewed.
She just simply said, wasn't me, I didn't do it.
But Joe is certain the evidence suggests she did. The suspect is charged with murder and fraud, along with 2 counts of attempted murder for hiring a hitman and giving the victim arsenic weeks before he died. But she pleads not guilty to all the charges, and the case is sent to trial.
By the time this came to court, we had a very strong case, in my view.
The trial lasts 6 weeks. The suspect is found guilty of all the charges. She's sentenced to life in prison. For Kate and Joe, cracking this case is something they'll never forget.
It started out as nothing. A person going into hospital with something that sounded innocuous, and somebody would have got away with murder.
You get used to solving cases, it's what detectives do. But ones as difficult as this, it's always satisfactory to know that the jury has backed what you've had to say. We're happy with that result.
We're not seen as crime busters in the coroner's office, but it does show that sometimes by making the right call or sitting and thinking about something's not quite right, that we do actually solve cases.